Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to this learning experience brought to you by Rocket Software. My name is Cody, and welcome back to Techstrong Learning. We've got an exciting program ahead, but before we get things rolling, we do have just a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to review with you. First of all, today's workshop is being recorded. So if you'd like to rewatch at a later point in time, or of course, share with your team, you will be receiving an email with a link to access the recording on demand. Now, we would love for you to interact with us today, and there are a couple of options for you to do so. The first option is the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So if you see that feature, I'd like you to go ahead and test it out by letting us know from where in the world you are joining us. Looks like we've already got a couple of people here with us, so go ahead and let us know. Now, if you do have any specific questions for our speakers, for our panelists, we would love for you to send those into the Q&A tab. Sending your questions into the Q&A just make sure that we can keep track of it better, it doesn't get lost in the chat, and we'd really like to answer as many of these as we can. So be sure to send those into the Q&A. Additionally, if you check out the handouts tab, you'll see there are a couple of resources that have been, now they are available for you. So feel free to grab those at your own leisure. And of course, before we close things out today, we're giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So be sure to stick around to see if you're one of our lucky winners. So our topic is Modernize Your Mainframe to Unlock the Power of Hybrid Cloud. And within our program today, we are going to facilitate 2 different breakout rooms. Your first breakout room will be Modernize Mainframe Data Logistics Management. And the second breakout room is Reduce Costs and Accelerate Mainframe DevOps. So more on that to come, but feel free to jump into either one of those when that time comes. Now, today's panel consists of Jeff Charrington, VP of Product Management at Rocket Software, Robin Anderson, Senior Product Manager at Rocket Software, John Crossnow, Director of Product Management at Rocket Software, and very last but not least, we have Anna Murray, Director of Product Management at Rocket Software. So to our entire panel, Jeff, Robin, John, and Anna, thank you so much for joining us. Jeff, would you like to lead us into your presentation?
I absolutely will, Cody, though you've stolen my thunder on the first things I was going to present to the group. But I want to thank Sharon from Integrity Data Solutions for being the very first to get into the chat and introduce herself to us. Alan, welcome. David, all of you, we're very, very happy to have you with us, and we encourage anyone else who may be participating here today to begin the conversation in the chat. We're here to have a discussion around modernization for the enterprise infrastructure. We're going to talk, as we said, in 2 different breakout rooms, but I will give a preamble. I'm going to start a little bit to describe Rocket Software because I think it's important that you folks qualify whether you think that what we have to say is credible and substantial. So we'll do this in about 15 minutes or so. Then we'll go to the breakout rooms where John and Robin will be talking about mainframe data logistics management and how it can best be modernized in the new hybrid infrastructure that we're all participating in, while Anna and I will talk about how you can reduce costs and accelerate mainframe DevOps. Cody will give us instructions as we come to the end of this prepared material about how you can join us in those individual breakout rooms. The thing we start with is something that we're all subject to. We are all seeing how we have pressures from many different directions as we provide what the enterprise needs in terms of IT infrastructure and IT excellence. This is particularly true within the mainframe marketplace, which is what the 4 of us tend to represent. We have run a recent survey that was done specifically for Rocket, and what we're finding is that there is an impulse to challenge the question or qualify the question. Are you getting off mainframe? If you are, why are you getting off mainframe? And what we're finding is that the trends continue to shift toward a modernize and optimize posture around mainframe. For those enterprises that have mainframe, we saw the percentage drop from 20 to 16% over a year's time, from 21 to 22, who are just operating as is, just trying to keep status quo and keep the lights on and do nothing more. And we saw the percentage of those who are actually looking to get off the mainframe by replacing it or replatforming their applications by percentage point, with the vast majority saying the mainframe's part of my reality. The mainframe is something that I'm going to continue to depend on because it does really superior work for certain workloads. However, I need to make it part of my very broad hybrid infrastructure, hybrid cloud strategy. That's where we at Rocket have excelled. Sadly, not every enterprise in the world has engaged with this. One of the things that we found as we were engaging with the market and surveying the literature is that sometimes modernization becomes very disruptive. And sadly, in the case of TSB, a bank in Britain, they actually embarked on a modernization journey that they had committed to. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars and labor years in their attempt. They failed, and as a consequence, the British governmental oversight organizations fined them over 48 million pounds for the lack of their technical achievement. And that's why we believe at Rocket that there is a better way. There is a way to modernize without that degree of disruption, taking advantage of the best of both from the heritage mainframe and from the new emerging capabilities on cloud. And within the particular domains of scope, that's what we look to talk to in these breakout sessions. And we're going to certainly bring our opinions forward, but we're as keenly interested to hear what your experiences are, what your opinions are, what things you have tried perhaps that worked well and perhaps did not, as well as what you're seeing amongst your peers on the industry. We'll just set the expectation. When we get to the breakout rooms, it's meant to be a conversation. There won't be much, if any, deckware available for either one of them. Continuing the thoughts about Rocket and our posture, for those of you who don't know Rocket, we've been in the business of providing software for infrastructure management for the enterprise for over 30 years. We were a bootstrapped company that has been purpose-built for ensuring excellence in the infrastructure management of mainframe. And as the market and technology have evolved, we've extended that to ensuring that the mainframe is an active, able, and easy participant in engaging with the technology that's now available from the cloud, as well as your distributed infrastructures and the overall hybrid cloud approach that the market's begun to describe. We very specifically have a point of view. We have a point of view that the mainframe is and will continue to be the best platform for some workloads. I will tell you from a long career, there is no better platform for maintaining high availability, highly responsive, low latency, online transaction processing, and high volume resource constrained, tight window batch operations. This is where I started my career on the data centers of one of the largest transaction processors of the world. And nothing I have seen that has come since has improved on what's available with an IBM z/OS mainframe running CICS for online transaction processing. That's why it remains the system of record for some of the most important workloads and some of the most important systems and some of the most important industries in the world, including banking, finance, insurance, government, healthcare, retail, and more. but it doesn't do everything. It doesn't do everything as well as some of the other newer technologies. Right now, there is a great deal of energy in discussions around machine learning and using AI for analytics of whatever workloads may be in question. And while you can do that kind of algorithm development that drives machine learning or AI on mainframe, it's not the best platform for it. We Rocket will say categorically that there are better platforms for doing the development of your algorithms. There are tools available. There is the elasticity of processing power and storage available in the cloud that the mainframe just doesn't match. It's the best place to move data and do the very, very intensive analysis and number crunching that results in powerful algorithms that can improve the outcomes for applications and for customers. The consequence, though, that we also talk to customers about is that once those algorithms are built, certainly there are places to use them within cloud or within distributed architectures. But one of the best places to actually apply those machine learning algorithms is back on the mainframe. And that's because in recent year, IBM released their z16 mainframes with a machine learning inference dedicated silicon chip, the Telum chip. And when I talk to professionals in the industry that are keenly interested in applying what machine learning can do, they say their initial analysis is the Telum chip with its dedicated silicon can actually run up to 20 inferences within the 2-second window that is the current standard of excellence for a payment card authorization, as an example, compared to maybe 2 or 3 using the resources that are available from the cloud. That means real cost savings to customers. That means real fraud prevention and real value to the industry and to the market in general. So that's some of the background. For those of you who are not familiar with Rocket Software, as I mentioned, we were established 30 years ago. We are a global company, 2,600 plus Rocketeers around the world, more partners and customers than most people would imagine, dealing with virtually every vertical within the commercial space and in the public sector with government, state, local, and education, federal. All of them are customers of ours either directly through the products that we provide directly to the market and from the acquisitions that we've made over the last 30 years, but even more from the IBM infrastructure management offerings that we, Rocket, actually engineer for IBM. We are actually the engineering excellence behind a Megamon, the most prominent mainframe performance analysis and monitoring tool. We provide the tools and utilities for IMS, for DB2. We are standing behind DB2 Connect and many more. We are IBM's largest software technology partner, and we provide the engineering and the second and third level support for over 100 IBM branded products. And what the reason I take time to voice this is to underscore that what we talk to today, we come to the conversation from a great deal of experience that gives, in my opinion, sound credibility to the things that we'll discuss and to the opinions and the conversation that we'll offer in the breakout sessions, even if perhaps you've not heard of Rocket Software before. When we talk about in the breakout sessions how to modernize without disruption, we do have a particular viewpoint that is associated with the mainframe and cloud dynamic. Within that large scope, we think that there are particular modernization stack relationships between app dev and DevOps, automation, and the hyperautomation alluded to in the prior discussion, content management, which tends to be some of the most computationally intensive and storage intensive parts of what we in the technology sector provide to the enterprises we support, data management, storage and disaster recovery, and all of that then needs to be dealt and administered from a horizontal, in this case, in this particular view, vertical, but a horizontal set of activities and competencies for performance management to make sure that we're maximizing the value of our technology investments, and surely security management in a world where even mainframes are at risk to ransomware attacks. It's not just a matter of protecting data privacy by ensuring that there is not penetration and there is not issues with the configuration, but it's also ensuring that the data is secure as it rests in place in the data center. So thank you for the time and the attention for this preamble. I'm wrapping up here. I've stayed within the 15-minute window that I look to stay within. I invite you, for those that are interested in modernization of storage in cloud or on-prem, to go to the breakout session about storage modernization, have a conversation with John Krosno, who will perhaps talk about the Rocket Cloud Connector, which allows a quick, easy, and seamless way to store secondary mainframe data in the cloud to take advantage of their lower cost per unit and their elasticity, as well as Robin, who will talk about the means by which data virtualization can be applied with Rocket Data Virtualization as an example, to move data from the somewhat intractable, sometimes difficult to integrate with legacy subsystems on the mainframe, such as DB2, IMS, vSAM, SMF, and more. And for those of you who are interested in DevOps on the mainframe, please come join Robin and I as we talk to the opportunities that are available today, both in terms of using the common open source tools that are preferred by many DevOps toolchain users, and how those can best be orchestrated with an enterprise orchestrator that encompasses all of the tech stacks that are needed in your DevOps value stream, from mainframe to cloud and perhaps even to mobile. So Cody, that ends my preamble. I believe I turn this back over to you so that we can then go on to the breakout rooms.
Great. So we have three kind of areas here, and let's just start with the first one, which is related to your hybrid cloud strategy. We'd like to gear this conversation to what are your biggest obstacles or challenges related to that, so that we can talk about how Rocket might be able to help. Does anybody want to go first?
You may need to unmute yourself.
And if you would like to unmute yourselves, the controls for that are at the bottom of your screen, and you do have access to doing so.
And if no one wants to jump in, I'll give it another minute. I'll seed the conversation with a starting point. Anybody want to jump in terms of obstacles or discussion topics?
Is it just three of us, or there are more people there?
I don't know how many are in the room. Cody?
There are about 20 of us in the room, but you are our only participant on camera.
Okay.
Which we appreciate.
Yes.
So I'll try my best. The question is the obstacles of opening the data. Sorry, can you rephrase it?
It's on the slide. It's the obstacles are related to managing your mainframe data in a hybrid cloud strategy, right? So maybe a lead-in question to that could be, do you have a hybrid cloud strategy? Are you sharing or using, cloud storage with your mainframe? And if you are, kind of what are the obstacles that you face in doing that?
Well, I'll start with Dave. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I said nothing comes up like that in my mind. I'll wait for others to join in.
Okay. Well, kind of to add on to what Jeff mentioned in the preamble, right? Mainframes very well suited for high volume, transaction-based workloads. System of record stays on the mainframe. Clouds well suited for kind of analytic or scale out kinds of workloads. And if we look at what we have heard some of the challenges be in that regard is how to unlock that mainframe data. So as an example related to data virtualization, what that enables to happen is that data to be made available to the cloud, whether if that is uploading that in a bulk data sort of a way or virtually accessing a variety of data sources to a variety of target sources so that it eases the time to market, the skills you might need for some of those legacy mainframe data sources. So it helps to, again, unlock the data and make it available to the cloud to do the things that it's good at. So you can kind of have both access to both of those environments from an infrastructure perspective. Any thoughts about that? Anyone experienced that?
Is anybody in the room, are you guys using, have a hybrid cloud strategy? Are you using cloud tied to the mainframe for anything? We don't need to know which company you're with, but just more of a, are you or not?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I was just trying to, type in something in the chat, then I thought maybe it's better to talk. So one of the things that we had done for one of our customers, not really a modernization as such, but more from a MIPS optimization aspect. So we tried to move things from the mainframe onto using Micro Focus as a solution. And then, and it was mostly because, the storage now has come down, the cost of storage is pretty much down. So the processing time was something that was being of a concern to the customer. So we moved the processing to a Micro Focus based architecture on the Windows servers and all that. But the data was still on the mainframe itself. The data was DB2. And we tried moving it onto the Windows servers like UDB, DB2 UDB, but then the latency and and then the security was of a concern, so they did not want to adopt any of that strategy. So we did a pilot, and then we said we will stay back with the DB2 on the mainframe itself. So I'm here to listen to see the more on the data virtualization as to how that could move data onto the cloud, because we have done that for other non-mainframe customers. We have done cloud migration, both applications and data, and it's been successful. But it's here, what kind of connectors do you have, and how do we, manage that?
Sure. So from a virtualization perspective, as you don't have to move the data, right? So you can use it through the virtualization and access it in that way. So you eliminate some of the concerns about moving the data. We have a variety of APIs, REST, SOAP, SQL, et cetera. So it depends specifically on your specific use case, but generally speaking, any standard API, for the most part, you would be able to take advantage of with data virtualization. The data itself is mapped via a process where virtual tables are built, that references the data. And I'll share it in the chat, actually. We have if you're interested in more information about it, there's a publicly available demo that you could, after the call, look at and get some additional information about that as well.
Okay.
Is that helpful? Did that at least, I mean, we only have 20 minutes, so we can't cover everything.
No, yeah. Yeah, any information would help. I mean, and I also thinking like, so how does, your, I mean, on the cloud, we have the multi-tenant options and things like that. So how do we, design that with that in picture, for a mainframe data and, customers, right? I mean, again, there could be some kind of
Did we lose him?
segregation of data that they would want. And then if you want to build a multi-tenant based data strategy on cloud.
I can't hear him anymore, John, can you?
I can't see him. Not sure who it was. I was responding to a chat message, but.
Okay, I think that we lost the person that was speaking. So when he rejoins, I can pick up the multi-tenant piece of the conversation. For the group's benefit, basically, there's so many different use cases, that apply to data virtualization, as in anything. So generally speaking, what we do when we work with customers is we do a proof of concept and identify an area where we define we want to see how the data virtualization side of it needs to get set up. And then some things end up having to be addressed from the customer perspective, right? So if there's a multi-tenant environment, we would need to work together to figure out how data virtualization would integrate with that multi-tenant environment. So it depends upon the specific use case in that situation.
Robin, the individual we lost on the call or seemed to, he said he can hear us. He was asking kind of design, so he could hear your response at least. So hopefully that was helpful. It depends is the short answer, right, on your specific situation, and then how data virtualization would play into your multi-tenant situation with the cloud. John, do you want to maybe talk about? Yeah, I can ask a little bit. So, in the other side of a hybrid cloud strategy, and something that we've noticed either through surveys or that we've done or others have done, and through conversations, is while as was earlier indicated, the cost of storage has come down some. The cost of storage on the mainframe is still pretty high, especially if you're using virtual tape systems and things like that. Not physical tape, because physical tape is still relatively low cost, but slow. But when you think of virtual tape library systems, the storage for that is still relatively expensive. And so just curious if anybody is looking at or has a strategy around using cloud object storage for archival data, moving data that you don't need access to, but from a regulatory standpoint, you have to keep for some number of years, and in some cases forever, of moving that off into what is more like a cold storage, right? Where you have access to it, but it's not taking up expensive or more expensive mainframe storage space. Is anybody doing anything like that, or is there anybody looking into any of that? And it's possible that nobody on the call is kind of in that area of your organization. I guess that's possible too. So,
why don't we maybe move on to the third question area? I'm sure you are all using mainframe data to help drive better insights and modernization as well. At least I'm pretty sure. Are there areas there that you have challenges in, we could be of assistance in? And John, I don't think you did get an answer to what the current strategy for backing up mainframe data. I didn't.
No, and it's possible that that's a particular disciplinary area, right? And so it could be that there's nobody in the room that is focused on that, but to your point, a lot of this is, trying to drive some conversation and understand what what you guys as organizations are doing today, and how this may or may not fit into some strategies. And to your point, Robin, on the third question, we're all using mainframe data in one way or another, and how are you using that data to drive insights, right? When we think of analytics and we think of some of the other more upcoming technologies, how is that data being used? Or is it more of a, we'd love to use that data, but we're not sure how, right? Or where is the best place to use that data from? Then do we have to get into data warehousing and make copies of all that data somewhere to apply analytics to it, right? Does that make sense to anybody? Are you guys doing anything in those areas? I'd love to hear some of that.
I do see, John, a note from, I think, our participant that we can't hear about data backup. If you saw it, I'll read it. Perfect.
So onto low latency drives, typically cold backup, hot backup, for DR purposes. So on that, and since we can't hear you, well, feel free to type that in. Kind of what low latency drives are you moving it to, right? Is it low latency, open systems type storage that you're moving it to? Is it worm storage devices, write once, read many? Is it just kind of looking for some input into maybe into that area? What does it look like?
Any feedback?
If you're looking for your question, it got moved over to the Q&A.
Oh, I wondered where it went.
Tab at the top. So at the very top, you see chat, and then next to that is Q&A. I think Cody moved it. Somebody moved it over there for us.
Participant 800, did that help answer your question? Do you have other questions? Related to a client reference, I see the next question, related to using data virtualization that improves MIPS consumption. What is, for most use cases, what we have statistics on a variety of different data sources, is what we've been able to do through data virtualization is obtain up to 99% zip offload when we do data virtualization. That's the best case scenario. We have like from 80 to 99%, but it's always been pretty impressive. We don't have a public, customer reference. Customers are oftentimes kind of reserved about publicly giving their names, and many companies don't allow that from a policy perspective. But we do have statistics, and I'll make a note to see what I'll be able to, I can see what I can share with the group for all the variable data sources and what we've been able to achieve. But generally it's between 80 and 99% zip offload. So big total cost reduction. Any other questions about that? John, I'll just mention a few more things about data virtualization as people are maybe considering additional questions, and then maybe you could do the same with RCC, might help generate some conversation.
Sure, go ahead.
For RDV, we talked about integrating data with hybrid cloud architectures at a high level. And then, there are other benefits to data virtualization that help across the board, including with your hybrid infrastructure. And that includes the fact that there is a growing skills gap as it relates to legacy data sources, right? Younger talent that is coming out of school or are self-taught, whatever the case might be. One of the things that virtualization does is they don't have to know, COBOL, legacy ways of using and interfacing with the data. It's modern interfaces that are used. So that's one of the advantages to data virtualization. We talked already about cost and latency of moving data off the mainframe, and both some of the specific use cases and challenges around that, but generally that's a big uplift. Another big one is gaining insight from data sources not previously available. It really unlocks, as I talked about at the beginning, that data that can be used in other places without a huge expense that would be related to like ETL or something like that. Accelerating time to market, kind of for all the reasons that we just talked about, is a result of all of those things, and which also helps drive digital transformation. So that's at a very high level, and that's probably in some of the information Claire sent out in handouts, I would imagine, what some of the big rocks are for data virtualization and how it can help the organization and hybrid cloud architectures. Don't see any more questions yet.
So I'll touch on the other side of hybrid cloud strategy, right? Backing up. There's really a couple of service levels to consider there, right? There are organizations, right, that we work with that back up data that they rarely need to reference, and they write that off to S3 object clouds, object storage somewhere. And the reason for that, of course, is they don't need access to it that often, but they want it safe and secure somewhere that's not taking up expensive storage. And then you have data that you might need access to maybe just a few times a year. And you don't want to necessarily recover that or recall that from cloud storage. And so you might think about on-prem storage appliances that support S3 object storage and write backups, store backups there. Things that you again don't need to recover or recall that often, but when you do, you want it quickly and efficiently at a lower cost, right? And all of those, of course, are lower cost than sometimes the virtual tape systems, or just keeping that data on the mainframe. When you think of GDGs, right? Do you need to keep them all when you can recover them quickly? So those are some of the strategies that customers we've been working with are deploying. And so curious if anybody here is in that area. One of the responses was that we're not sure that's part of the infrastructure group, and that makes sense. And that's probably where it really belongs. Just wasn't sure if there were folks here from that were more tied to the infrastructure group or knew what was going on there. So always willing, always happy to hear what different companies are doing, what different strategies are being employed. So. I think we have about 15 seconds left, Cody, before we're supposed to, or 20 minutes, jump back over to the main group. Is that still the case?
I think we were going to go back to the main group before the top of the hour, I think.
Yes, it looks like our other breakout room is still going a little bit, but we did just receive another question. If you want me to go ahead and pop that up on the screen.
Data analysis tools do you suggest can be used if the data still resides on the mainframe? Oh, Robin, that's one for you.
Well, I'm not sure I completely understand the question. Do you mean if you want to virtualize the data off of the mainframe, what data analysis tools to use? Is that the question?
So does the data stay on the mainframe in this case? Or
if the data stays on the mainframe, there's no need for data virtualization. So that's fine. Or I guess I'm not understanding the question.
Yeah. So there are tools available to run on ZOS, right, on the mainframe, that can perform analytics against that data, right, against the live data, if you will. Often you may not want to always perform analytics against production data. However, when you think in terms of, take credit card processors, you go use your credit card somewhere, and it gets denied. Well, it gets denied because they detected the potential for fraud, right? Some activity flagged that it might be fraudulent, or you got a phone call saying your card was used fraudulently. There are tools, right, that monitor those transactions and that data, right, that activity, and perform those analytics on the fly, right, on the mainframe to be able to determine if something is being fraudulent or not, right, activity. And those are tools available on the mainframe. We don't have those. Sometimes they're homegrown. Sometimes they're built into ZOS processors and use some of the newer processor capabilities of ZOS to do that. Is that what you were referring to? All right. But data virtualization wouldn't really help in that aspect, right? Because you want access to the raw data in those cases. But virtualization in general would be helpful if you're, wanting to access a variety of data on the mainframe and have that available to you, to some process in that way. But that isn't where, like, Rocket Data virtualization plays in that particular case. So, other question: is there any use case you have related to helping clients extract mainframe-sensitive data to generate data to non-prod environments for their code testing? We do not. We don't necessarily do that. Now, our RDV, Rocket Data Virtualization, really gives you more of a live view into the data. But we don't have, in our area, any of those products. Now, there's other division where, we have data intelligence, other groups that may provide data access to some of that sensitive data. I'm not sure how they do with data masking, though. But we can take that question, of course, and get back to you. Cody, do you have access to the specific information for the individuals, right? That we can respond to that properly?
That's right. We'll send you all these questions in a follow-up, and you'll be able to respond accordingly. Perfect.
Yeah, some of these Robin and I may not have the right answer to, but if we don't, we'll get you a good answer back out for that.
I rejoined. I got kicked off there for a couple minutes. Sorry about that.
My hands were not on the keyboard, Robin. It wasn't me.
I don't know what happened. I was like, it's getting awfully quiet.
Robin, there was a question that came up, and it was about extracting mainframe sensitive data to generate basically test data. There are products in the market that do that. I don't believe that we Rocket have any of that. But if we do, it would probably be over in the data intelligence group over in that area somewhere. And I said we'd look into that and get a proper answer back for that.
Yes, thank you, John. I did verify while I was not available for a minute, the zip offload, the TCO related to zip offload is between 80 and 99%. So we haven't actually seen below 80% in any of our installations. So that's a big advantage. And then I will go ahead and share via chat that link I mentioned that will show you a demo of data virtualization and an overview. So if you get a chance to look at that, you're more than welcome to do so.
Well, John and Robin, it looks like our chat and question have slowed down. So everyone in our audience, thank you so much for engaging with us today. If we'd like to, we can go ahead and just migrate this whole group into our other breakout room and catch the end of that session if we'd like.
Sounds good.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I am participant 9950. Can you hear me, Anna?
Yes, I can.
And participant 950, do we get a first name?
You may call me David.
Oh, okay. Hi, David. Were you the one who posted about that customer who had the modernization over 17 years? Not modernization, but get off the mainframe? Okay.
Yes. And I left out, guess the size of the company.
I have no idea.
Oh, come on. You got to guess. I mean, we're in tech. Make up numbers.
Are you thinking about number of employees or millions or billions of dollars?
Oh, forget head count. That's.
Oh, okay. Let's go with 2,000.
How much?
2,000.
Ooh, very close. 1,200.
Tiny.
Tiny.
Wild.
In my world of ZOS, an IT department of 1,200 people is tiny.
Yeah.
So
when it comes to application development, that's certainly the case. I know I've been in some shops where we would have regiments of COBOL coders who were keeping up with the systems that we had to support.
Yeah, and I am a vendor. That's why I'm here. We got to do everything to keep the puppy alive. Our specialty is what we call the odd languages. One of them being Model 204.
Oh.
Ever heard of it?
Absolutely. I was just on the phone with P. Gary Gregory yesterday. Do you know P. Gary?
I do not. No, I've never been close enough. I just know as the customer-facing side, I do not have the full list of languages. But Model 204, I mean, it's the esoterica. It was really fun with Y2K chasing all this stuff that you never heard of, but it's absolutely categorically still in use. So.
Yeah. And it is, and we're very grateful for that. There's certainly an entrenched base of Model 204 customers that we are more than pleased to support.
They're busy right now.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, one of the big interesting ones coming down the pike, because retirement brain drain is. I'll just chatter on until you guys take over.
Well, I was gonna jump in real quick and see if we could get the name of our other person in the breakout room. We've got participant 789. I think I heard you break in momentarily. Are you still there? They're on mute. I just wanted to see if we could get the name.
Of course, this is part of the problem. These webinars, they move the stupid icons around.
Well, and from the vendor chair is and David, I'm sorry, this is David that I'm speaking to. Yes.
Yes, he's the one who posted in the chat, in the main chat, about the company that took 17 years to do the transformation.
Yeah, I unfortunately I couldn't monitor the chat while I was presenting as well as I would have liked. But for we as vendors, David, the other struggle is it seems like every time we work with a new group for doing webinars, they bring a new webinar platform forward.
Yeah,
and
of course. I wonder, not that I can give any attention to how many of these are whitelist or white box. Somebody, Zoom is trying to break. I mean, it's just like I was looking at it this morning. Took a long time to remember that SQL Server came from Sybase. And so that's the kind of genealogy, product genealogy I have to pay attention to. And it took me a long time to remember Sybase. What I knew SQL, Microsoft doesn't write anything. Fox Pro. How much Fox Pro? You guys support Fox Pro? Still out there.
That's crazy.
And DBase. But anyway, you guys, you're the driver here. I'm just chattering on. Shut me up.
Well, no, this is meant to be a conversation. We are anxious to hear if the other two participants in our breakout session here, which I only see as 789 and participant 457, are able to join us and are able to come off mute. It appears both of you are on mute, and if you could come off, we'd love to introduce ourselves and have you introduce yourselves to us.
This is participant 457. My name is Kirk. and I work for the city of Long Beach as a IT project manager, and we still have many of our interfaces to mainframe-based platforms like LA County Sheriff's, and just looking to learn as much as I can about this.
Are there any particular struggles you guys are facing right now with your mainframe DevOps initiatives?
Well, let's back up just a bit, and so hearing that, Kurt, did you come into this conversation with a DevOps posture? Is that something that you were particularly interested in, or are you just generally here to learn more about mainframe and interfacing with heritage systems from some of the other departments that Long Beach County has to engage with?
I think it's kind of a combination of both. I'm always fascinated, as DevOps tends to be more of a world for modern platforms, and how it's applied to something like a legacy platform. And so while it is a city of Long Beach, my background is I used to work for the city of Los Angeles, and so there, I guess I've worked on and off of mainframes for years, and like many folks on the calls, and so my old job at the city of Los Angeles, they migrated their mainframe to the state of California Cal Cloud. So many of their workloads are there. We are still working on interfaces between all the other regional agencies, and many of those interfaces are mainframe based. So yeah, just looking to learn as much as I could about kind of DevOps and mainframe.
And participant 789, are you able to come off mute and introduce yourself? We can see you're muted here in the user interface, but if you're having difficulties, please do reach out to our hosts. I think there is
Just left.
Bailed out. Didn't want to be put on the spot.
Too embarrassing. Too embarrassing. A bit of history. So I'm the claim to fame. I'm the guy that coined the term Y2K.
Are you now?
Yes. And so that comes with a whole bunch of context. And one of the things that pushed me into it was with the collapse of the mainframe in the early 90s. We're looking around for new business with all these big Boeing, Shell Oil, Rockwell, Treasury, etc. And a Gartner report in late 93, I think it was, said that across the 15,000 IBM mainframes, what's the definition? Who knows? No more than 10% had purchased a change management tool. I assumed this was because at that time, Endeavor was independent. It was not part of CA. It was run by somebody else. I forget. And I just assumed, whoever owned Endeavor had written a big check to Gartner. This is the name of the game. So I called around to customers, and the 10% was wildly optimistic. I mean, I had people I had strangers tell me, what would we need a change management product for? We've got we've got Librarian, we've got Panvalet. They literally did not know the difference. But anyway, so, and it's a mystery to me. I've seen IBM beg to be at the DevOps table, because as far as I know, DevOps and mainframe are they don't live. DevOps is a little box word, and change management is a big box word.
Well, we're actually seeing that evolve, and part of it, again. So, thinking about some of the things that we've said in the conversation so far, as you say, there is a certain amount of talent that's retiring around the mainframe, and certainly we see that nowhere more than in leadership. There are many technology leaders who are competent and effective professionals, who are responsible for all the technology in the organization, who may not have any mainframe in their experience.
Right.
We run into it more and more often. And so they have an expectation that what they are accustomed to in the distributed world, the cloud world, should also apply to the mainframe. And we're meeting them in that space. So what I have on screen is representative of some of the contributions we Rocket are making back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
DevOps now, you'll find that these 20 or so packages are some of the most frequently used, and clearly Git, curl, bash lead the list. Perl and Python as languages very, very close behind. And so we, Rocket, actually port these so that they can execute in the ZOS mainframe and then become part of a DevOps direction that mainframe application development shops can take advantage of. And we're getting tremendous uptake.
I have a direct personal tale on that. So I remember I'm here in Boston, and when I lived in the suburbs, we had 4 high-speed internet services on the pole outside our house. God only knows why, but and so I was watching my son banging away on World of Warcraft, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how? I mean, I couldn't make any sense of that stuff, and he's ripping away. He was 8 or 10 years old, and I'm thinking, he said, oh my gosh, how are we going to introduce that generation? He's now 32. To command line.
Mm-hmm.
To we'll upload it to ISPF. We'll promote it. And long story short, he has come around to understanding that when you remove a GUI is a highly inefficient use of your fingers. If you take you're using a mouse, if you're in software and you're using a mouse, you've cut your productivity by 30%, guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. And so he's come around to wanting to learn. I see Vim up there, and what's the other one? What's the granddaddy? Emacs. He's there are some people who do learn that the mouse is a huge hindrance.
So, we certainly take the position that they each have their place in the enterprise. At the end of the day, a well-constructed graphical user interface may take away 30% of productivity compared to what somebody who is expert can do with a command line or with a scripting tool like a Perl or a Python, whereas in many cases it will augment that by bridging the gap of knowledge and expertise that the user might have. You talk about command line, and to me it's been very interesting. What I've seen is we have basically returned to a command line like world, and all of the scripting that's available and used commonly now with Perl and with Python in our mainframe space. So Kurt, I was going to ask you, as you said, you come to the conversation with at least some degree of DevOps interest. Are you seeing in any of your work the need to integrate any of the mainframe development or mainframe infrastructure deployment in DevOps, or is that completely outside the scope of what you do at Long Beach City, and you're more interested in integration with those other systems from the other departments?
Yeah, it's out of the scope of what these are platforms I don't manage or control. I'm just fascinated by the conversation. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm hearing conversations about ISPF. I haven't used ISPF in years, and I'm waiting for somebody to bring up C-lists and JCL jobs and stuff. So I mean, it's I haven't heard these terms in a while. So but yeah, it's more the. I think we are trying to modernize our our application delivery and just our application platforms. And so that's why I was kind of curious more from that perspective of where they align, meaning the mainframe, which we kind of all think of the old days. And I remember doing, build and release on mainframes. It was just very different. So.
Right. I wonder too if some of the state of California things are starting to invest in adding Zoe to their mainframes. Zoe is another modern angle to take with the mainframe, and it's something to be thinking about. We have some customers in the state of California, and certainly one that uses one of our JCL management tools. And one of the things we're doing for those next generation developers is making sure that they have user interfaces that make sense to them, right? So some people want to use Eclipse, some people want to use VS Code. Zoe is a fantastic platform for the mainframe that's really starting to do that abstraction out of the mainframe into, the mainframe is just another platform, right? And there's API interfaces, there's web interfaces, and this is a very, very cool open source part of the Open Mainframe project place for many companies to go. And I think, Jeff, you might have some statistics somewhere about how many companies are now adopting Zoe. It's increased greatly over the last few years, if I recall.
So there's a couple of different metrics that we would speak to. And by the way, David and Kurt, if either of you are going to be at Share Mainframe conference in New Orleans here in 3 weeks, I'll be there certainly, principally to talk about Zoe and Rocket's participation in Zoe. If you've not heard of it, the three big vendors of IBM, then CA, now Broadcom, and Rocket came together and said, we want to get back to the community. One of the things that we hear from our customers that's needed is an open architecture and open license capability for building new user interfaces. While I don't dispute what David says about the efficiency of an expert individual on command line versus GUI, we also know that many of the mainframe consumers, the people who need to work with mainframe applications, are not themselves mainframers. And I know from my time in banking, I would have an entire call center of 15,000 call center representatives, certainly not trained to technology, that we were expecting to interact with ISPF interfaces. And that was difficult. We spent a lot of time on training to make it happen. The industry recognized that and began to put more user-centric graphical user interfaces into the hands of those end users of the mainframe capabilities. And that was suitable and made advances. And over time, we all identified that it could be very expensive and sometimes throwaway because we invest in the wrong technology. We decide to build our new user interfaces using Gupta SQL Windows or Power Builder from Sybase. And the market moves ahead and we suddenly find out those are no longer leading technologies. If you don't use VS Code and Visual Studio, you're not in the game. This is an architecture, infrastructure, and armature then for building new user interfaces to legacy mainframe applications more quickly, more easily, and more uniformly using things such as VS Code and other sorts of commonly available capabilities via APIs, so that we can get these unlock the value of the mainframe for the non-mainframe community, if you will. And if you've not run across it, I know that you almost inevitably will. In the mainframe, there are 56 or now maybe it's 58 Zoe compliant offerings that are out in the market. Those in the industry who work with DB2 are going to find that all of their ability to administer DB2 tools and utilities is going to be available through a Zoe enabled user interface. There's a big market now for this from the vendors and from our actual enterprise customers who are beginning to adopt it to use to build their bespoke in-house custom applications. But I do want to go back to the conversation around DevOps for a moment. So hopefully, David and Kurt, you both, as I think Kurt alluded to, recognize some of these Vim as a terminal emulator, perhaps. Git as a common repository, and that's where we see the most energy right now, is the use of Git with Bash to bring the management of source code or mainframe development into the common Git repositories that encompasses the entire enterprise, from mainframe to distributed to cloud and beyond. And that's working very effectively. You can use Git now as part of your source code management, integrated with an Endeavor, integrated with our lifecycle manager, perhaps, to achieve the outcomes that you want as a technologist. And what actually makes that work much more effectively is having a powerful enterprise DevOps orchestrator. And Anna, I wonder if maybe you could draw the line of sight from some of these open source packages back to the orchestration that we have available for both open source packages and for proprietary packages, so that you can begin to put your DevOps development value stream on the same basis as the line of business, which is end-to-end, absolutely blind to the many different tech stacks that may be involved, but still carefully coordinated and managed.
Right. I would say one of the things that strikes me when I look at this list of tools that's on the screen is one of the things we're talking with our customers about a lot is unifying their tooling and reducing the duplication of tooling. And that's where they're starting to save money from a training perspective, and making sure that they can train their people, new people coming on board, making sure they're able to work in their workflows seamlessly. But the other challenge that's happening is they're unifying workflows from mainframe to distributed systems. There isn't a single automation center for all of them. I hear a lot of them are using Jenkins for one thing and Ansible for another thing and Kubernetes for another thing. And there's all this automation happening in a bunch of automation islands. And because everybody, I think, gets at this point, we must automate or else we can't get all of our work done. And so people will go after the quick and easy thing. But then as you're trying to unify an entire stream of processes from the inception of an idea to make an improvement to your software, all the way to delivering to your customer and moving files around and updating records for them, you need to have a connected stream. And there's lots of recurring processes that happen in that process. And whether you're interacting with open systems products or mainframe products, to have a single orchestrator to connect the dots makes all the difference, because then from one place you can see how things are flowing. And one of the things that I think we talk to customers about in the savings there is, if you orchestrate Jenkins from a central place, instead of just letting Jenkins be its own thing and Kubernetes be its own thing, when you connect the dots and it's part of your entire chain here, the centralized orchestrator lets you see when your processes in those spaces start to run longer, when they start to take more, whether they take more time or they fail sooner than they should have. You're getting alerts a lot sooner on when problems happen. And so, the thing that I think people aren't thinking about the orchestration up front because they're too busy in the tooling. And this is something we're talking about with them early, is start thinking about that orchestration, because when you get your people tooled up right, that's great. But what happens when your people have to do repetitive manual tasks to get things done? When they submit their code to Git, something should be building it, whether it's on the mainframe or it's in open systems. Once it's built, it should be tested. It should be scanned with security tools. It should then be published, if it's passed, into a production environment. What is making all that happen? Is it a human being, or is it an automated and orchestrated process that you can manage? And so that's one of the places that we help our customers as they move forward and simplify their environments, is to give them an easy tool for that orchestration.
Anna, Jeff, there is some chat going on. I'm not sure if you guys have answered all the questions in there.
And I'm trying to respond to some of them now here while Anna was talking.
Double process? Can't you mutual multitasking there, Jeff? Come on.
I was looking at the wrong chat log.
So there was a question from Eves V, who I'm not sure is still in the chat with us, that I think you answered, David, and you answered exactly the way I would. I've not run across EGL in so long.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of absolutely. I'm not a techie. I'm a history. I read history, and the older I get, the less relevant technology is, and the more relevant history is. I mean, one of the very irritating things that with the consolidation of software is they changed the damn name of the product. And so you can be talking to someone, and they say, no, we don't use that. We like, EasyTreeve, EasyTreeve, and EasyTreeve Plus. That's always a good one to confuse people. Anyway, thank you for those links, Jeff.
You bet. And I believe Eves, was that you speaking? I think you and David were speaking over each other, and I heard part of it, but I didn't hear all of it. Could you please repeat? I regret to ask.
Ooh, here's some people.
I think what is happening is Cody is bringing us back into the big room, if you will, for the giveaway.
There's 9 minutes left in the breakout. I think Robin and John may just be joining us.
That could be.
Yeah, ours ended early, so he suggested we join to hear the end of this.
Yeah. So David, yeah, I believe it was Eves, or perhaps. Yeah, I am recounting the problem with having run into EGL developed applications and trying to deal with them. And it is a problem across the industry. I'm not sure I'm going to offer any magic bullets, but we see it frequently when we're asked to come in as a provider, either Rocket alone or Rocket with IBM, to replace some of the other vendors. Particularly Broadcom CA has a number of mainframe 4GLs that they have had in market for a while, and that some customers have built very sophisticated bespoke applications. And because of the pressures of finance and commercials, they let their talent go. I think David was alluding to the loss of talent, and they end up with an application that works perfectly well, but it's on an unsupported language, and that's something that many regulated industries just cannot tolerate. In the best cases, but the seldom cases, there will be an automated code translator or port offering. In the case of EGL, I expect it's very much like a CA Vision or some of the others that we run into. It becomes a professional services engagement, and it becomes the tedious task of trying to reverse engineer those applications to figure out what they did, and then develop them and deploying them in a new set of tools and capabilities. And there's not anything I've seen in the industry yet that actually provides an alternative to that. It is one of the things that we simply have to recognize. We inherit some of the sins of the past, if I can use the metaphor that I frequently voice. There have been short-term decisions made by leadership in prior periods that lead to unintended and unwanted results in later periods. And we're always anxious and keen to engage in conversations around that, but very frequently they lead to conversations where we make introductions to our professional services partners. And I believe we lost Eves again.
Back to reverse engineering, which I like to call reveng. since you got to abbreviate it. The customers somehow so I started that really interesting under that label in 1986 at Fidelity, where the basic issue, I mean, at that point, this piece of Fidelity was 40 people. And there was one guy that understood the system. And of course, it wasn't the system. It was a collection of cobbled together things bolted on the side, which is the normal architecture of all firms. And people still somehow dream that they're going to find a magical, crappy old code in and wonderful magical code out.
I'm just getting a prompt. Our breakout room here will end in less than 30
happen.
seconds, and we'll go back to the big room where they will do the gift card giveaway. But yeah, that's been my experience too, David, is, I mean, it's not entirely dissimilar to what you or I or some of our peers may have experienced, where you inherit a complex COBOL program and have to go back and using whatever code comments may have been left and your own intuition and experience to figure out what was actually done, and then recast it perhaps in new COBOL or in a different platform. The good news is we, Rocket, do offer some tools that are better at helping folks manage, maintain, and even reverse engineer their COBOL programs than some of the other programs like EGL or CA Vision. I have heard of it, but it has been 30 years ago.
Have you heard of
and
EGL?
I'm scrambling through some of my resources, and I'm not finding much about it at this point. Certainly, we want to thank everybody for joining us. We appreciate the conversation. Again, what we want to emphasize is that we, Rocket Software, have been in the industry for over 3 decades. We are one of the most substantial players in mainframe and now in the integration of mainframe into your hybrid cloud and hybrid infrastructure strategies. Certainly, if you'd like to know more, reach out to any of us here, Robin Anderson, John Krosno, Anna Marie, or myself. With that, Cody, I'll turn it back over to you for the giveaway.
Awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much. And Robin, John, Anna, thank you all so much for joining us today. I do want to remind everyone that this session was recorded. So should you want to rewatch, you will be receiving an email with the link to access the recording on demand. We will be also editing it to concise it a little bit so that you will get access to both of our breakout rooms consecutively, and you'll have all of our content that was captured today. Additionally, that will be available on the Cloud Native Now website and the Security Boulevard website. So visit cloudnativenow.com/webinars or securityboulevard.com/webinars, and they'll be waiting for you in the on-demand section. So the 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift card giveaway are Rafaela T, Bronco B, Dhruva D, and Jeff S. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your inbox. We'll reach out to you in the next 48 hours to get those gift cards to you. If you don't happen to see that email, check your spam folder on the off case that it happens to get filtered out. I'd like to thank Rocket Software for their sponsorship today. And to our attendees, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we really want to hear your feedback. So as soon as we close out, and also in the chat, there's a link. But whenever we close out, you will be filtered into our post-webinar survey, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, and you may now disconnect. Robin, Jeff, Anna, John, thank you all once again.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.